Before I get into today's video, I want to give a shout out to a Black booktuber, and today's shout out is going to be to Young, Gifted, and Black. She's been on BookTube for about just over a year, so congratulations on that. She has about 1.6 K, so 1,600 subscribers. So yeah, she does a lot of good book reviews. A lot of them look to be African literature, so if you want to get some great picks from literature written by Africans, this would be a good channel to check out. And also, she did a review in French, which I thought was pretty cool. So definitely go check out Young, Gifted, and Black's channel. I will place all the links to her channel and social media down in the description box below. Hi, my name is Justin, aka Ghost Reader, and today I'm going to be doing a book review, and that is a review of The Black Cabinet, the Untold Story of African Americans and Politics During the Age of Roosevelt by Jill Watts. This was published by Grove Press, and this book comes out in May. I'm not sure the exact date. I'll put the exact date down in the description box below. So I want to thank Grove Press and NetGalley, from which I got this as an ARC, for letting me review this book. So this book actually caught my interest because I had not heard about the Black Cabinet before. The Black Cabinet was a group of African Americans who got together to give advice and to push for change for African Americans in the U.S. During the administration of Franklin Roosevelt. So that's what this book talks about. It talks about the beginnings and what this group went through during the FDR administration, and the things that they got done or tried to get done while they were known as the Black Cabinet. So the book first covers the first Black Cabinet that actually formed under Theodore Roosevelt, because at that time a lot of African Americans were Republican and were trying to get things done through Republican politics. However, the first Black Cabinet didn't get much done, but was reformed again once FDR came, and you see kind of the beginning of a switch from African Americans being solely Republican, but starting to change their vote to Democrat to see if they could get some concessions from Democrats. And that is really what this book kind of focuses on, is not so much, FDR coming and saying like, oh, I need a Black cabinet to tell me how to help the Black community. It was more of these black federal workers. People worked in the federal government in the time where there were not a lot of Blacks working in the federal government. They came together and said, how can we use this opening where Democrats are seeking our vote? How can we leverage that in order to make some progress for African Americans? And with the New Deal being proposed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, this was a great time when there was, programs being made for the poor, to try to make sure that those programs also helped African Americans, which in the beginning they weren't. They were actually, a lot of these programs were, actually, I would say all these programs in the beginning were discriminatory towards African Americans, and it was because of these group of federal workers in the federal government pushing not only for these programs to be more integrated and to actually be fair and pay the same salary to a Black worker that they would pay a white worker, and why that actually makes sense and will help national recovery, because you're paying them the same, and they are both able to participate in the economy and help it recover from the Great Depression. But that was something that needed to be pushed by these administrators in the federal government, and they were led by Mary McLeod Bethune, who I known about before in some of my other readings from African American history, but I didn't know how much she was actually involved in a lot of these strategy on how they were going to get this and these proposals in front of FDR and push for that. And she used her relationship with Eleanor Roosevelt to get basically contact and access to the president, which was a great help, because that was a problem for how do we get in front of the president, and Eleanor Roosevelt helped get a lot of their proposals and some FaceTime with FDR. So and this book was eye-opening for me. It showed me a whole bunch of other African Americans who did so much for the progress of African Americans in this country, especially during the Great Depression, where there was a good chance that African Americans will still have been left behind, meaning that the Great Depression would not have ended for them even after the quote-unquote after the Great Depression was quote-unquote over. So people like Robert Weaver, Al Smith, Ben Haskey, had never heard these names before. And these books brought their contributions to the fight for civil rights in this country to the fore. And we kind of, and I think for a lot of people, we kind of just point back to like the 60s and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and those and Rosa Parks in that era. That's the golden moment of the civil rights when it all started and everything. But there were people even before them. These people here, the Black Cabinet, working behind the scenes for the most part, where a lot of black newspapers were like, "What are they doing?" But they were kind of working behind the scenes, and a lot of the stuff wasn't publicized because they could get in trouble for some of the stuff that they were doing, some of the methods that they used, but they were working nonetheless to advance African Americans in the United States. And I want to say thank you to all of them for their work, because they laid a lot of the groundwork for a lot of the progress you have today. For example, putting anti-discrimination clauses in federal contracts to people, saying that if you're not going to if you're going to discriminate, then we're not going to give you this contract, forcing companies to then integrate in order to get like the contracts they needed from the federal government. So seeing that, just putting it there and like putting anti-discrimination clause, but also needing enforcement from the federal government was something that was important. But yeah, this was a great book. I learned so much from it. I enjoyed reading it. Definitely like opened my eyes to the fact that like in this country, a lot of the times you kind of like a lot of the progress that has been made and still being made is not because some politician somewhere got the cool idea one day to push this law forward, but rather it was African Americans in government, not just in government, but also activists putting pressure on perhaps politicians who don't really want to do put these particular laws and make this particular step forward, but because they need votes and the political pressure, after a while they eventually make these changes. And that's a lot of the changes that come under FDR. How they happened was that they were putting political pressure, because he was kind of reluctant to do it because a lot of his support came from Southern Democrats who were very racist at that time. So these pushers along the way to push him to do stuff. Now, they didn't get everything done. Like, they pushed for anti-lynching legislation. That didn't happen. They pushed for the army to be integrated. It wasn't integrated under FDR, but was under Harry Truman. So they eventually got that done. But FDR was like, he had some pushback from the Army and Navy. They were like, we're not going to do it. And so he didn't want to lose their support, so he didn't push the issue. But yeah, it just goes to show how activism and activism, putting political pressure on politicians, even if you don't like them or they don't like you, but putting that pressure and using it when you can force politicians who may not want to actually push forward change. I would say that the unfortunate thing is that sometimes the politician gets a lot of the credit and not the activists or the people behind the scenes that actually push for it. And that kind of happens where you see like people call it FDR's Black Cabinet, where I think it should just be Black Cabinet because they are the ones who really came together of their own volition, not because FDR said, oh, I need this and so make this happen, but rather they got together and say, hey, I think you can use this. And they said, okay, sure. So I think that they should get a lot more of the credit. So it shouldn't be FDR's Black Cabinet. It should be Black Cabinet. And I like the fact that Jill Watts just named it Black Cabinet and not FDR's Black Cabinet, because it really goes to show how much they did regardless of the president at the time. So I give this book a 5 stars out of 5 stars. It was a great read. I encourage you all to read it. You will learn a lot about this book. You will learn a lot from this book. So that's the end of this review. Let me know down below if it's the first time you heard about the Black Cabinet. And if it's not your first, let me know where you heard about it from before. So if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at GhostReads28, on Instagram at Justin the Ghost Reader, and on Goodreads. Link to that's down in the description box below. So as always, keep reading.